Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Glorantha on the Iconic Production YouTube channel. Again, this is going live for all of our patrons a week before we push it live to everywhere else. We may be changing that in the new year. We're putting up some polls on Patreon to see if maybe putting this up on Twitch or simul-streaming it would be easier. But for right now, this is kind of our goal and our the way we're going to handle this. So I am JM, the GM, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Evan. Evan, always good to chat with you. How are you doing today?
Great to be here with you, JM.
Well, today we have a very special. I know I said, hey, we're going to talk about elder races, but Chaosium managed to kind of surprise us, and we are getting. Let me see if I can get a good view of that so it doesn't get glared. We're going to be looking at the RuneQuest starter set. Now, I love starter sets for a number of reasons. One, the Chaosium ones, they're trying to add value. And I would say most starter sets do this. They're not trying to reprint adventures that appeared elsewhere. They're trying to get you into the game as quickly as possible and provide some paths out of the starter box to kind of lure you away. But starter box are always great because they tend to be cheaper than the core rulebook. They tend to come with a lot of material. And the Chaosium ones, the one for Call of Cthulhu and the one for RuneQuest, are just exceptional. So we're just going to do a deep dive into what is available in this starter box, what we think about it, and as this podcast, videocast, YouTube channel show is really about getting you as GMs and players from what is Glorantha to playing Glorantha at the table as quickly as possible. It seems like a no-brainer for us to review a product like this because this is how Chaosium sees the quickest way to get people into the world. So without much further ado, we're going to jump into the RuneQuest starter set. Now it's filled with a lot of material. So Evan, why don't you start us off here?
Yeah. So, well, the first thing that's in it is a sheet that tells you what's in it, and it is extensive. I mean, it's just substantial, and I should say that this sort of sheet has been traditional for Chaosium for a very long time. Their box sets have tended to come with this handy informational sheet, and this is just the pinnacle of everything they've learned in putting together box sets for decades. And the overview, of course, there's 4 books that are sort of the core. Rules, a world book about Glorantha, which, hey, exploring Glorantha, we love that. A Soloquest, which we're definitely going to talk a lot more about, and then a set of adventures. And so we're talking about potentially months of play for you and your friends to start off. Then they provide you with a bunch of ready-made adventurers, also blank sheets to create your own, handouts to help you out with the quick reference information, and some gorgeous maps.
Yeah.
Just there are two-sided maps. One has a part of Sartar, so we're the starter set, just like the core rule book and the initial adventures that have been issued officially, all focus on the Sartar region in the post-Dragon Rise era. And the focus for this box is the area around a city called Johnstown.
Mm-hmm.
So they have
a nice compendium there.
Yes, indeed. And they... deep cut there. So a great area map with a terrific, it's an excerpt from a much larger map that we've been seeing being shared by the creative director at Chaosium, Jeff Richard, and they have this level of detail for all of Sartar and the surroundings that we're going to see in future products, but a lot of evocative, great areas on the map to imagine things happening. And then on the opposite side, a very detailed map of the city of Johnstown, which is presented as sort of the home base option for the starter box. And then the other is a player's version and a GM's version of an area that features in the adventures book called the Rainbow Mounds. I just can't. Oh, and
dice, right?
You got to have some dice. Mine are cursed, but I'm sure I just got the cursed ones, and everybody else.
No, I think they come pre-cursed. That's a feature, dice. Not a bug.
So just a tremendous amount of stuff.
Right, and there are 14 character folios. We're not even talking character sheets. We're talking, 3-panel character folios. They'll stand up. You'll have your art on the backside. They come with 7 of the original characters from the rulebook, the GM screen, 7 new complete pre-gens. Yeah, Evan's showing those off. They are gorgeous. All new art, and they're all available for you for free to download to get started to play right away. And one of the things I love about what Chaosium did with this starter box that I'm really hoping we're going to see going forward is more of... So what they did with this, there's a book called Soloquest that we're going to get into in a bit, but they provided that as a free online experience as well. And I'm hoping that'll be true for their game lines going forward. So if you want to get a brief introduction to what this game is like, but we'll jump into that in a bit. So the image I have on the screen right now is the cover for Book 1, The Rules. Now, I will say one thing. I was showing it to a buddy, and this is true of all of Chaosium starter boxes. The paper quality between the print books that you might have come to expect from Chaosium and those in the starter boxes, they're a little different. There's a little bit more almost magazine style pages. So let me explain that. A magazine is like a book that would come out on this is way back. It's like a blog that they would print out and then produce and send to people. But anyway, it's a little bit lighter paper, but that's okay because there's a reason why they do that. It's to keep the cost down so that the starter box is a great entry price for new players and new GMs. But this first book is the rule book, and they actually take the whole of the rules section of the RuneQuest rule book, which is several hundred pages, and pull it down to a 64-page rule book. There's no, like many starter boxes, there's no actual character creation rules in here. For that, you'll have to go out and buy the RuneQuest full rule book. However, Evan pointed out that those rules are available, and we're going to put them in the show notes as a free download online at the Chaosium website. This is a great starter primer for the rules, but also this is the rule book that I'm probably going to end up keeping out during play for quick references. Much like any game that I run, I'm going to make rulings at the table, not pause to look up rules, but at 64 pages, it's pretty easy to, find something that you need quickly as opposed to flipping through the main rule book. Now, Evan, you're the one who found out they actually have a new wiki as well. Do you want to chat a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Well, so yeah, 2 things. First, the character creation that Chaosium has put on, it's a series of web pages that takes you through sort of an abbreviated version of creating a character that from the main rule book. So, that's another thing that sort of extends your ability to explore Glorantha using the starter box before you decide to dive in. And the rule wiki is similar to that. It's simultaneous to putting out the starter box with all the value that's in it. They are providing all of the essential rules in a different way, in a wiki format, also on the Chaosium website, which is, we're going to drop a link to that also in the show notes. So if you're running very online, as you know, in the time of COVID, we do, but I think, afterwards, the barriers to getting your group together, if you're geographically dispersed and playing online, the wiki is going to be there for quick reference and rulings, maybe even faster than the 64-page book. Now, Dan and I, we're used to pulling out something physical and flipping through and finding it. It's tactily, but for the online experience, having the wiki there on your screen, or being able to quickly click over to it to get the information on some point of the rules is really handy. And another great piece of value that Chaosium is putting out. They want to support building a community. They want people to be interested and to have an opportunity to play in this amazing world with a great rule system that's really stood the test of time. So the wiki is just one more thing that you should bookmark in your web browser and have available if you're going to go forward with this, which we recommend you do.
Yeah, and there is something about having a physical book, whether it's the quick start rules or the actual rule book. As Evan said, there's the tactile sensation. There's the fact that multiple studies have proven that when you're actually reading a book, your brain doesn't just remember the words on the page, but actually like spatially where you were at in the book. So like, oh, I think it was about this deep. But then also, as Giles pointed out in that great TV show many years ago, the problem with wikis is that there's no smell. Like this, like odor is like the smell of a new Chaosium book just is wonderful. So this book covers multiple things. You have your combat rules, you have the rules about magic, you have the rules about rune magic, spirit magic. It is a pretty comprehensive introduction to the rules of Glorantha, but we don't, this show's not necessarily about the rules of RuneQuest or 13th Age Glorantha or QuestWorlds. It's really about the setting. And the second of these 4 books, this is where we get into the setting of the world of Glorantha. So this is great. It takes the 250 or 60 page Gloranthan source book and pulls it back down again into 64 pages. So it gives you a brief and pretty thorough look at Johnstown, what you need to know about Glorantha. So things like how the world was made, the gods, the myths, the hero quests. But then kind of the second half of that book focuses on a starting town, the town that they're going to set you in. And if you did not catch the reference earlier, the Johnstown Compendium is also the main place for fan-made supplements to go up on DriveThruRPG. So Evan, what are kind of your highlights for this section?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing I want to mention is the amazing art that they've placed in this book. It really does transport you to the world and helps illustrate. You can give all the deep background and overview of the different ages and little digest descriptions of the gods, which are all super useful and helpful in orienting, particularly if you're going to be running, but also because Glorantha really encourages and rewards deep play, this sense of your character in the world, but nothing like the art, transports you to see yourself and to see, the interaction of the characters. You're not in a you're not in a modern space. You're not in a medieval fantasy world. You're not in Middle Earth. Jam and I both love Middle Earth and love lots of different visions of it. This is an ancient world, a world that is recreated imaginatively with magic, with living myths, but that is tied into a deep part of the human past that is so remote from us. We only know it through archaeology and ancient iconography and the few stories that have survived. But the lands of the Iliad, of the Odyssey, of the Epic of Gilgamesh, of other ancient, deep mythological works of humanity, and the art really makes that connection of, oh, this is the way people look. This is the way that people conceive of things. This is how the gods manifest. This is what everything from a building to coinage looks like, and it's bright, it's colorful, it's attractive, it's exciting, and I think they really nailed it there.
And what's interesting to me is we talked about how a good starter set takes you from the starter box out into the product line. So the first book clearly leads you directly into the RuneQuest Glorantha core rulebook. This book leads you almost directly into the Gloranthan source book, or actually further out into the Guide to Glorantha, which is a massive tome that someday we'll do an entire year's discussion on.
Really? We could.
And then
a year might not be enough.
A year might not be enough. That is a beautiful and massive work of love and lore for this setting. It is the equivalent of the history of Middle Earth for Greg Stafford's world. Now, what we have next is it kind of leads us out of, here are the rules, here's the system, here's the setting. Now, what's next? Well, obviously somebody at the table is going to have to be the game master. And what I love about this starter box is that the first adventure you get to is essentially a choose your own adventure solo quest that gives you the information you need to sort of, as the game master, learn the rules and the system kind of going forward. So this is actually the Battle of Dangerford, and you play Vasana, correct? Am I remembering correctly?
That's right.
Yeah, you play Vasana, who, if you've read through the RuneQuest Glorantha rulebook, is one of the main point of view characters through the character creation and the rules explanation setting. So this is the cover of Book 3, the Soloquest. Now, I've got to run through it once. Evan has died more times in his run-throughs of Soloquest than I could ever hope to imagine. So what I'd like to do is, Evan, if you don't mind giving us an overview of the Battle of Dangerford, and then I'll kind of talk about what they've put up online as our kind of rounding out this section here.
Yeah. So the Soloquest, again, there's a history behind this. They're back in the RuneQuest 2 days. There were 3 Soloquest books that were published by Chaosium. The sense of allowing you to either bring your own character or have a pre-generated character and to go through, again, a choose your own adventure, but with with the game mechanics in it. But this is the Soloquest reimagined as not only a way to experience the world, but a way to learn about the rules in a very, they give you, this is how magic works, this is how fighting works, this is how skills work, this is how social interaction works. All of these things you get an opportunity to play through, to roll your own dice, and to succeed and to fail, and also takes you on a tour of the world from the perspective of this woman warrior, Vasana, who is a patriot of Sartar, and at a pivotal point in their timeline, the Battle of Dangerford happens after what's called the Dragon Rise, where the Lunar Empire suffered a tremendous defeat, and they were thrown out of Sartar. And this is the counterattack. The Lunars are trying to come back and to reassert their imperial authority over this renegade province. And the ragtag batch of heroes that you are a part of is meeting them at this river, at a river ford, Danger Ford, and you are a part of the plan to draw the line here and stop the Lunars from re-invading and taking back over your country. And it gives you the motivation of the character, their history, and then you get to move through and make a lot of different choices. Are you going to engage with the gods? Are you going to just look after your equipment? Are you going to scout on your own? Are you going to talk to the leadership? Are you going to try and rally the troops? And there are a couple of things that are recurrent that happen because you have a set responsibility in the battle at the beginning. You are a cavalry warrior who rides a bison, so awesome. But because you're not just going to sit around on your bison at the beginning of the battle. You have to go out and join the archers and slingers and people, throwing and shooting things as the enemy advances into the river. And then your job is to retreat and get on your bison and to do some more stuff. And then, of course, the chaos of battle happens, and sort of anything goes. But of course, you are the hero of the story. So, pivotal things like happen where you are given like an important mission at some point. Now, I will say that bad things can happen to you.
Yes, I was going to say that what I like about the Soloquest rules, and this is something I told my players when we first sat down to play RuneQuest, I was like, listen, you're not going to have the same character. Like, most of you are going to go through multiple characters. Even though some of the characters that were in the very beginning survived till the end, those players still lost multiple characters kind of throughout the course of the campaign. The Soloquest rules don't pull punches. Like, you will lose yep. Vasana and have to start over. There are many ways for your character to come to a grisly end, but it sets up the theme and the tone of the system for the game master.
Yeah. Now it does want you to have a full experience, and so there you do actually potentially get to experience being resurrected, mm-hmm. because you are important enough for the mission that you might be walking towards the light, and then suddenly the healer pulls you back, and you're like, oh wait, I was going to get to rest, mm-hmm. And you come back for more punishment, or no, that was just my experience, but I will tell you. The first danger that I faced were some arrows, random arrows. Arrows are flying all around, and so I had to roll to see what happened with the arrows as I'm running along with my shield up, and the rules very carefully explain like what areas you can protect with your shield, etc. And the first thing that I rolled with my new dice, they're lovely, beautiful. They're beautiful dice. They're beautiful. I rolled an 01. or the arrow on my abdomen, which you learn is an impale for max damage with no armor protection.
Yeah.
Which means if you take 18 points, which is what an arrow fired from a composite bow does, which you also learn in the rules, you die.
Yep.
Instant kill. But then I got to find out about resurrection and all sorts of things. It is a great adventure, even though I have been through 3 times, and I have, like I said, first dice, or maybe just bad choices. I don't know. I always get the bad ending, but nonetheless, I have had fun every time. And even as an experienced game master and player, I have found nuances in the rules that they've clarified. I think they've done a great job. And I did play through on the online version of this, and I think they've done a great port of, from taking the book and flipping pages to being able to click through on hyperlinks. And the only thing that's a challenge for you, if you haven't bought the starter box, is the question of the rules. But now we have the rules wiki. Now, the Soloquest does a great job of pointing you to the exact pages of the rules if you're playing out of the starter box, and that is in the online port. They still refer to the page numbers, so you'll have to run a search on the wiki or something if you're unsure about the rule. But that will let you also learn the wiki. I think it's a terrific tool. It's very fun. It teaches you about the world. It teaches you about the interaction of characters. It sort of teaches you about some of the big players that are going on, which you can use or you can ignore when you're running your own game. I highly recommend it. And if you're not sold on the starter box, which you should be, but if you're not, go play the Soloquest. Yeah. It's available online. We're going to link it in the show notes. And I think it should win you over because it is a really well done piece of engagement for both the rules and the world.
Yeah, I got to talk with Rick a little bit over email, Rick at Chaosium, and was talking with him about the Soloquest. And it was actually originally designed to make sure the paths all went well before they got it, into production. There's 200 different options. So if you are familiar with like choose your own adventures, sometimes you make choices, sometimes the dice tell you what choice to run through. But it is we'll put a link in the show notes, and then for our patrons, we'll put a link on the Discord channel as soon as this episode is done to both the rules wiki and to the Soloquest, so that you guys can see what we're talking about basically immediately. Yeah. Now the final book is the adventure book, and there are 4 of them. And what's really great about these adventures is if you go back and listen to November's episode, the previous episode of Exploring Glorantha, we talk about all of the adventures that are available from Chaosium for RuneQuest Glorantha. And you can take that information and come right out of the adventure book and go directly into one of those books. Now, this book is the largest of the 4. You've got 84 pages. There's 3 adventures. There's 3 or 4 adventure seeds at the end, and then a huge amount of rumors to roll on that once you've played through the Soloquest, once you've played through these 3 adventures, you're probably ready to run your own game in Glorantha and take one of those rumors or one of those adventure seeds and just go off on your own and go running your own campaign set in this mythic world that obviously Evan and I adore, and we're really trying to kind of open the door for more people to come in and play in this world. So there are 3 adventures, and the first one, what I like about the Rough Landing, which is a Rough Landing, which is kind of the first adventure, is it gives you 4 bullet points of, hey, by the end of this adventure should have taught both you and your players these things about the world. Combat is not something to be rushed into lightly. Passions are important guides to behavior. Social commitments and connections are critical to survival, and not everything is as straightforward as you may expect. And if you've been following along with the channel since the beginning, these are the four things we keep coming back to in a variety of different ways and tones to say, hey, this is what is important about playing a game in this world. It's not itinerant murder hobos running around just doing whatever whims happen to come into their head. This is, hey, combat is brutal and deadly, even when you are prepared. I am thinking back to a raid on a lunar tax caravan. I know Becca is in the chat right now, where she built a cavalry warrior and rode in and died, even though she was prepared and they had time to prepare. I had another guy who was playing a heavy cavalry guy, and a lucky crit took his leg off, and he bled out on the ground before anyone could sort of help him with that. This is something to remember about this game. But Evan, your thoughts on these three adventures? I don't want to go too deep into them because obviously we don't want to spoil anyone's experience about them. But the three adventures are a rough landing, a fire in the darkness, and then the Rainbow Mounds, which I adore. The Rainbow Mounds. It is almost a classic dungeon crawl with a massive Gloranthan twist and spin and flavor on it. The art that I've just put up is from the Rainbow Mounds and is, well, Evan, what are your thoughts on these adventures?
Yeah. Well, so I was going through them last night, and they are, it's a hefty tome, as you say. 84 pages of advice, adventures, the extras, and they, I think they are three really good, interesting adventures that present exactly the four pillars sort of that you were discussing. That in the first one, it's let's introduce you to Johnstown, and let's introduce you in a way that you're drawn in, and you have to make immediate difficult choices, and it's great. I mean, potentially lower stake immediate choices, but it provides advice, up to sort of dealing with overreaction from players potentially, or anything in between, so that they are introduced to the world, what this microcosm in the city is like, dealing with the citizens, dealing with the leadership, the town guard, and dealing with everything from language translation problems to responsibility for your actions, and then getting you sort of entangled in the events of the area and invested. There's risk and reward offered that really makes the connections meaningful. So if you take 4 or 5 of these 14 pre-generated characters, throw them in, and you're instead of you all meet in a tavern, it's you all were just in the Battle of Dangerford, or some related action. You are all feeling like heroic warriors, and you survived the battle, however exactly came out, but the lunar menace is receded a little bit, and now you're coming for some R&R to a city, but of course things are more complicated, and it is somewhat of a linear adventure, but that in the best way. It's there you can get off the rails at any point, but it 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 gives you choices to move you through and learn the world and how things work, and to have some excitement and potentially get find your place in this new home base.
Well, and again, like you said, it's fairly linear, but I mean the other thing to remember is this is the first adventure that in theory, if you've never played RuneQuest Glorantha before, this is your first foray out with a group of other people at the table. So the hand holding, the advice, the kind of, hey, we're going to agree to kind of move through this and explore it, I see as a real like benefit to this, because the second adventure, the Fire in the Darkness, spreads out a little bit more.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Definitely. And you definitely get the benefit of, hey, not only does this company create RuneQuest and Glorantha stuff, they're also the folks that create Call of Cthulhu, a premier investigative role-playing game. And you get what is in some ways, well, it's certainly an investigative adventure. Something is going on. Fires are getting lit, and the populace is restless. They're distrustful of certain minorities of folks. They're trying to figure out, who's to blame and why is it happening. And this is a turbulent time. So there's politics and social conflicts and religious conflicts, and you're in a situation, candidly, where the former dominant political entity, the Lunar Empire, not only was it an empire of conquest, but it was also an empire of faith, that they were bringing, enlightenment to in their belief. And so there are converts on the grounds, people who are people's uncles and cousins and even brothers or sisters or parents or children, who were who the word of the empire, whether or not they believed in the imperial policies, they believed in the faith. And so there's this lingering tension of, hey, these people are related to us, but are they traitors? Are they secretly working against us, or are these folks maybe getting ready to be persecuted as a religious minority, but who don't actually pose a threat, a security threat? And so the play here is not just, oh well, there's a monster and we have to find it and kill it. There's a lot going on, and the choices are very meaningful, and you can choose to do some pretty extreme things that might be morally acceptable to the society that you're in, but might not be the best choices, because again, we are in this ancient world, a world where violence is always an option, and particularly at this heightened time of danger in the country, the path of Ronaldo, there's always another way, is kind of getting forgotten sometimes.
Yeah.
But being a hero is sometimes remembering the balance of your cultural values, and remembering, well, yes, I'm always ready to use violence, but maybe sometimes I don't need to.
Well, and I think that carries through into the Rainbow Mounds, because again, you have what seems to be a pretty straightforward dungeon or cave crawl, but is very much steeped in the lore of the region, is very much leaning into that, not what you expect to see. Like everything is not what it seems. And it starts off, it was what feels like a pretty straightforward call to adventure. Hey, this thing is back. It used to bother, the area in the past. We think it's back. And as the players go through, I'm just going to read a little, like, Through brute force, quick diplomacy, or clever problem solving, or some mix of all three, the heroes must eliminate a threat which hides in the Rainbow Mounds. And I have to say, so I read a lot of role playing games. I read every month. I read through a lot of role playing game books, and something that has been true for the last couple of years is that the Chaosium adventures, whether they are Call of Cthulhu or RuneQuest, they have all been exceptionally well done. I've been very impressed with Pegasus Plateau. I've been impressed with Smoking Ruins. I'm impressed with all three adventures here out of this starter box. And I think that, um, like, I really want to run the Rainbow Mounds like right now. But any final thoughts on this before we kind of give our overall thoughts here, Evan? Talk about where to buy it, where to play it, what to do with it.
Yeah. Well, on the Rainbow Mounds, and they acknowledge this, but the Rainbow Mounds were part of the original box as well. In the Apple Lane, little pamphlet that you got in that box, and it was elaborated a little bit over time. But going to the Rainbow Mounds has been part of starting someone's RuneQuest and Glorantha experience for decades. And here they have updated it, and they have elevated it from the dungeon crawl to retain some of those exciting elements, but to give more options and more challenges in this. And I think it's a great sort of capstone to the three adventures that they produce for the box, and the supporting materials, the maps, and you can when you purchase this from Chaosium, which we're going to be talking about, you can get the PDFs to be able to use those on virtual tabletops or something. It's just a very high quality and exciting adventure. And again, with you can be the murder hobos if you want to. In Glorantha, we would call those bandits or some sort of raiders. It's something clan, outlaws, people who are outside of society that nobody really wants to be around. But when you tinge it with deciding, okay, what is a valuable fight and what is a valuable negotiation, and maybe it's valuable to understand what's going on here. All of those choices are there, and it makes for a really rich experience.
Yeah, I was muted there, but I was saying, well, the other thing would be raiders or just flat out, murderers. That's kind of the, especially in a game that has. So if you get into this, it definitely shows that you have, this idea of ransom. That when you're fighting another human, killing them is not always the best thing, because if you kill them, you've basically incurred blood debt, and people will come after you. If you take them captive and ransom them back, that wipes out that guilt. So one of the things I love about this is when I was running my RuneQuest Glorantha game, I think I had 2 players who bought the physical book, and I mean that's a hefty investment. I appreciate all of my players who shelled out the money for the RuneQuest Glorantha core book. But at $30, getting a starter set and just saying, hey, if you want enough of the rules that you can look them up and play, a $30 investment is way easier for a lot of people to swallow and to set down for a new game. Plus, you get a Soloquest adventure, which is going to help you as a player learn the rules and the world better. You're going to have the setting guide. So even if you're a player, 3 out of the 4 books right away are intensely useful to you. And again, at $30 on the Chaosium website, that comes with the PDFs. You're getting a great value for the price. Again, if you're interested, we're going to post the links to the wiki. We're going to post the links to the Soloquest. But also for GMs, after you've run these 3 adventures, you can pick up any of those other things that we talked about. Like if you start with the RuneQuest starter box and then go to the GM pack, well, now you've got a couple more adventures and a whole new town to go to. If you go to the Smoking Ruins or the Pegasus Plateau, it just expands in very small ways the setting that you are going to feel comfortable playing in. And then just as a final note before I turn the mic back over to Evan, they just released a new PDF here, the Weapons and Equipment Guide for RuneQuest, that's available now in PDF. And one of the things I really like about the way Chaosium does their releases is if you buy the PDF now, you pay basically half the price of the book. So I think this one was about $18 for the PDF. But then you get a coupon when the physical book releases in 4 to 8 months, and that cost is deducted from the cost of the book. So if you buy the PDF and you're like, hey, this is something I really want on my shelf, because Chaosium gives you the printed PDF copy, you're actually sort of putting a down payment on the book and getting the information now. So Evan, any final thoughts on the RuneQuest starter box?
So of course, I highly recommend it. I love this. I'm an experienced, I've been playing in Glorantha for decades, and I do own either the PDFs or the hard copy of all of the latest iteration of RuneQuest. I love all that stuff, and I didn't buy the starter box just to do this to do this show. I bought the starter box because it's valuable to even an experienced GM. But I can imagine as someone starting out as being interested in this and wanting to get involved, and this I think really takes you through in a really positive and helpful way, and opens the world for you. But even as an experienced person, to get the maps, to get the area descriptions, and to have the reference material in it, not to mention the 80 pages of adventures, encounters, rumors, story seeds, all of that is applicable in any campaign. So I really found it a great value. I will say, of course, besides not within the box having the character creation, it also there are certain things that it doesn't cover, and I think we have to be clear about this. Rune levels, so becoming an important representative of your cult or religion, rune priest, a god talker, rune lord, or a shaman. Those are more advanced things that you're just going to find in the main RuneQuest book. But the thing is, with the way that they have designed to play now, I've listened to some folks who play for years, and many of their players never become rune level. It's an aspect of play that can be optional. So I don't think it detracts from the ability to play through the game at all. And in fact, I think there are months, if not years, of play just in this box. And if you add in other free resources like the quick start adventure, easy to throw in, and they mentioned that the Rattling Wind, the free adventure that's also in Pegasus Plateau, I think, but that they had made available free. There is lots of value before you have to decide, okay, am I going to buy the big book and I'm going to move into it. Now, of course, we think that not only moving into the big book, but also getting the Glorantha source book and maybe the Guide to Glorantha adventure, eventually are all good moves if you love these things. They are hefty, and they're an investment of time and money, and we all have to be judicious with this. The starter box is going to give you months and years of enjoyment and an entree into Glorantha and into exploring Glorantha
Right.
that I think really pays dividends. And I don't think it's not a cut rate entrance ticket.
Not at all.
It is, it is full freight. You are fully initiated and are ready to enter into all of the understanding and discussions and all of the just enjoyment that Glorantha provides.
Well, and not to actually, Evan, in any way, shape, or form. But you
Sure.
do get shaman rules and just a brief, like, quarter of a page on sorcery, but it is a very trimmed down so that you can use any of the starter characters and you have just
Right.
enough of the rules to understand how sorcery works and how being a shaman is. But I assume it would be an apprentice shaman. But they got the rules for fetches in there, so I'm not entirely certain exactly. But one of the things that I think if you go back and read through the blogs, the designer blogs for the starter box, is they really wanted to make sure that even if you've been playing in Glorantha for 40 years or playing with the new system since the book came out, that this box would have value to you. And as somebody who has done both, I think you can clearly hear Evan's discussion is it does. Like, it provides a lot of value for even an experienced fan and GM in this world.
They knocked it out of the park.
They really did.
It's whether it wins any awards, which it should, it's award-winning material.
Yes,
it's
I would.
I
100% agree with that.
Really was really pleased with it. I mean, I was excited about it, and they'd done a lot of transparency about what they were doing with the blog posts and showing things off. But it's only when you take the plastic off the box and open it up and feel the quality and flip through the pages and lay out the maps and things that the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And I think in just about every stress test, I would say that it's a pass with flying colors.
I would agree with that. Well, that brings us to an end of this episode, which is actually the 13th episode. So this is the first episode of the second season, if you will, or the start of the second year of Exploring Glorantha. It's kind of hard to believe that we are now 13 episodes into this thing. When we started, we had basically an outline for 4. And just a thank you, as always, to our patrons, to those who follow us on Twitch. We may be making some changes to where we are going to be streaming this in 2022, putting some polls up for our patrons to kind of see what their thoughts are, what they like. If you like what we do, please consider following us here on the Iconic Production channel on YouTube. Follow us over on Twitch so you get notifications when we go live. We have the Iconic podcast, which is our 13th Age podcast that we have some exciting changes coming for season 6. So it's our every other week podcast that we do. We're going to be launching 2 new shows in 2022. One is going to be the Grand Campaign, where we talk about running long-term games, which for me, RuneQuest Glorantha, games like RuneQuest Glorantha or Warhammer or Jackals, shameless plug for Jackals, they're designed to do. The longer you play, the deeper you invest in these games. Burning Wheel is another one. I think Burning Wheel HQ says you don't really even get a good feel for how everything works together until you're about 3 months into the game. So we're going to be talking about why that will be a campaign decision that you may be interested in, what we think the rewards are, and we're going to kind of come up with tools and stories and ways to help show why and how to run kind of the Grand Campaign. And then I'm thinking we're also going to launch a shorter show, kind of a bi-weekly, come hang out with JM while he designs something or talks about his campaigns, or even answers questions that people may have if you're struggling with a campaign design issue or have a question about something we've done on Iconic. Just kind of a hangout session with me and whoever else who happens to be available when we're doing this. But Exploring Glorantha will continue because it seems like you guys are enjoying this, and Evan and I have decades of material to continue to delve and explore and journey with us as we go through this in 2022. So, Evan, any final thoughts?
Go out and get the starter box.
That's right.
$30 is well, $15 if you just want the PDF, or so, 15 or so. $30 for the box. Buy it directly from Chaosium. Get the PDF. It's well worth it.
So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. We will be back in January, where we're going to start looking at the Elder races, starting with elves and dwarves and what that means in Glorantha. Have a good one.